own career. When I was a student at Columbia, one day I was accidentally brought into a lecture by somebody whose name sounds very strange to me. This is the first couple of years since I arrived in America. My English wasn't quite there. And the name sounds like a free lunch buffet type of thing. But anyway, but that lecture by Buffett really fundamentally changed the trajectory of my life in America and really gave the career that I enjoy immensely today. And so it gave me a great pleasure to be back into this type of a setting to communicate directly with the student. Now today I want to talk a little bit about the value investing. The basic concept of a value investing obviously is many, many decades old. But today I think it is as relevant as when it was first laid out by Benjamin Graham at Columbia 6-7 decades ago. There's essentially just three basic ideas. The first one is that stock is not a piece of a paper that you trade, but is a representative fractional ownership of a company. And therefore, valuing a stock ought to really have a basic variance of valuing the company as a whole. And then secondly, that in valuing any financial asset, that you have to really predict the future, the discounted cash flow of the future cash earnings. And the future is inherently difficult to predict. And therefore, you really want to leave yourself a margin of safety so that you could be wrong or you could be right. But because the future is a distribution of opportunity, I mean, with statistic possibilities, say you bet on something that at 90% of the chances you could be right, but then a 10% chance occurred, and so all of a sudden it become 100%. So you want to leave enough a margin of safety. In other words, you want to buy at a low enough of a price, even if all the adverse events occurred against you in the future, you will still be in the game. It doesn't mean you won't lose money, but it just means that you will not lose so much that you'll be out of the game. Because investing is really a long game. It can play over the life of anybody's career. And so you want to be really in the game somehow over the long haul. And the third concept is Mr. Market, to figure out a frame of mind to think that when the market is against you, you can really look at it as a neurotic Mr. Market that's prone for emotional and irrational behaviors. So those are the three basic concepts. At the heart of it is obviously it is this bargain idea that you want to really get what you pay for. Now, obviously that's what everybody wanted. And if everybody wanted the same thing, you would think that all of the professional investors will be value investors. And that's just a further thing from the truth. In fact, value investing, as is properly practiced, constitutes a tiny, small minority of all the investment professionals. Majority of the people hold different views. And let me just articulate for them the alternative views about investing. Number one, that yes, stock legally represent a fractional claims, a fractional ownership, but is first and foremost a piece of paper you can trade all the time. And therefore, it follows that successful investing lies in the successful guessing of the stock movement based on whatever informed theories or practices that you can find. And thirdly, that the market is to be respected, indeed to be feared, because they really, through the market, you can actually find a value, and through the market, you can actually buy and sell. So this, here you go, a different view, and it sounds even more persuasive than the first views that I laid out as a value investor. In fact, I would say majority of the people really follow the latter rather than the former. So as a young student trying to get into the business, which way do you follow? I would suggest that before you do that, you would go to some fundamental studies as to the result of various different approach and philosophies. Unfortunately, there has been numerous studies have done because we kept a pretty good track record over the last 100 years at least. Since it, and all the studies have given an unmistaken conclusion that the true value investors, as it properly practiced, have consistently outperformed the market, whereas just about all other strategies either match the market or severely underperform the market over a long period of time. Now you can dispute the result of it, but I think the evidence is pretty persuasive. And so the question becomes, if that were the case, of course, the study also concluded that the true value investors, that is properly practiced, really are a tiny small percentage of investing professionals. That is also a very interesting study, but they really do conform our day-to-day observation, having been in this profession for close to 20 years. So why is the case? Why is the case? If the empirical studies conclude overwhelmingly that going through the value investing is the way to go, and the philosophies and the practice are being well articulated for 7 decades and well practiced and indeed publicized by tremendous successful examples such as Mr. Buffett, as we just mentioned, why not more people follow what they do? Well, it turned out it has a lot to do with the human psychology. In value investing, you have to have this frame of mind that if you did your work correctly and the market against you, you should be comfortable standing alone. And this is the concept behind Mr. Market. But that's really very difficult to do. Indeed, it is a very unnatural thing to do. When the whole market is against you, when everybody else really think you're stupid and neurotic and wrong, and you now tend to think everybody else is a Mr. Market, irrational, neurotic, that is very, very unnatural things to do towards the borderlines of a self-delusion. Indeed, that's probably most people's view about you at the time. You look quite ridiculous and very uncomfortable. In fact, our very evolution requires a certain deal of conformity. Think about over the millenniums, over the millions of years of evolutionary past. Our ancestors, our animal predecessors, basically hunting groups. And if one was left out and disagree with everybody else in the group, very easily that one is not the one to survive. So all the genes that have survived in the past are the ones that tend to an extreme degree of conformity. And conformity also works very well as for human society, because we are, at the end, at the heart, as social animals. We need that sense of glue of conformity and sympathy, compassion to bring the society in peace and live together. So you need a certain mutated genes, in a sense, to be utterly comfortable to stand alone when everybody else disagree with you. Now that is the reason, at least that's one of the reasons, the financial market in itself is not that efficient. Free market, ever since it was practiced in modern time, about 200-300 years ago, has worked remarkably well. But it's worked most remarkably well primarily, I think, in the goods and services, physical goods and definable services. We have several hundred years of overwhelming evidence to support that one. Every country that we practice that one all turn out to be extraordinarily prosperous. Now we also have several hundred years of history A free market is a practice in the financial market, full of disasters, up and downs, and extreme movement. It doesn't really work nearly as well when it comes to financial asset. Why is it? Well, the financial asset at the core, in essence, is a discounted mechanism to predict the future. It's the discounted, estimated cash earnings into the infinity. And of course, we all know, A, we cannot predict infinity, and B, we can't even predict immediately beyond what we can see, which is usually very short. And so there's a necessary elements of a speculation and guessing, estimation into the valuations of financial asset. When that is exaggerated, there is an element in stock market and the financial market in general, the element of a gambling, element of a guessing, element of a speculation. And as we all know, in pure casinos and pure gambling, there is a huge advantage stock against players and really to the benefit of the casino owners who define the rules. And this is why gambling is such a profitable business. And yet that has never really persuaded the people away from gambling. There is a certain element that really fit human nature to love gambling. Even if everybody knows the odds are stacked against them. That has never prevented gambling from a very big business, especially when it's allowed and sanctioned by the government, such as a practice in Nevada or Macau and certain different geographies around the world. And so there is some aspect of that one in the financial market as well. And this is the reason why that it does not work perfectly well, as recently illustrated by the 2008-2009 financial crisis, which is only in the stream of a long history of financial crisis. But it doesn't really mean that we have a better way of dealing with that. So it's just as Churchill said about democracy, is perhaps the worst except when compared with all the others. And so is the market. So is the free market when it comes to financial asset. It doesn't work very well. It certainly doesn't work nearly as well as goods and services, but it's still one of the better ways we have come up with in terms of facilitating the flow of financing, which is vital for the workings of modern economy. So it doesn't. So it works. So that really is give us the challenge as a value investor, a true value investor. You just have to really reframe yourself from betting too often. Knowing that the financial market doesn't really work too well, but a lot of the time it works reasonably well. And so you want to really wait for the extreme situation before you can really make a bet, so that you have enough